How to eliminate negative emotions in minutes using simple NLP. Okay, negative emotions. Quite obviously something that you don't want, right? Would we agree? I certainly don't want to feel negative emotions on a daily basis. I don't want to feel them on a weekly basis. I don't ever want to feel a negative emotion. The only kind of negative emotion I ever want to feel is when you kind of want to be angry at something, or you kind of want to be a little bit pissed off, or you kind of want to just be like, oh God, but there's an element of satisfaction that comes with that. So it's not a negative emotion. Those are a little bit different, right? Because you're just like, oh, I kind of want to be angry. However, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about pure negative emotions. I'm talking about the kind of negative emotions that only ever hold you back, that only ever get you down, that only ever have you feeling shit. And you don't want to feel shit, you want to feel great. Those are the negative emotions that we want to eliminate. So I'm going to tell you the first way that we do that, okay? The very, very first way. The first way we eliminate negative emotions is to understand what image is creating the negative emotion, right? So negative emotions, understanding what image is conjured up in your mind, what image is conjured up in your mind that is creating the negative emotion. And at this point, you might be thinking, well, hang on a minute. It's not an image that's making me feel negative. It's that bastard over there who just called me fat. Or it's my boss that's shouting in my face and making me feel like shit. Or it's the argument I've just had with my girlfriend. Those are the things that are making me feel negative. Those are the things that are creating negative emotions. However, they're not the things that are allowing the negative emotion to persist. And there is a difference, right? There is a difference. They might be the catalysts. They might be the things that have initially created the negative emotion, or at least those have been the external stimulus that have caused you to feel a negative emotion, right? However, they are not the things that have allowed the negative emotion to continue. And allowing the negative emotion to continue is exactly what you don't want, right? Because that's when you stew on it. That's when you think about it. That's when it manifests into something bigger and uglier, and it makes you feel a way that you don't want to feel, right? That's what we've got to solve. Now, one of the major things that is allowing that negative emotion to persist is the image that you have now created for the negative emotion. And this can come from a memory even. This can be something that you experienced or witnessed or was a part of many, many years ago. It doesn't necessarily need to be negative emotion that's created by an argument you had 5 minutes ago. This could be negative emotion that's created by something that happened when you were 10 years old, that happened 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. It could be something that you experienced way, way, way back when, right? It doesn't have to have a particular time frame. But the thing is that event, that memory, that time in your life that is causing you to feel a negative emotion that you don't want to be feeling, whether it's 5 minutes ago or 50 years ago, it now has a place in your brain, in your mind. It has a place in your consciousness and your subconsciousness, and it manifests itself as an image. Okay. Now that image, it might be a moving image, almost like you're replaying a memory, like a movie, or it might be a still image, like a photograph, a picture, or a painting. And I'm going to come on to that a little bit more in a minute, but it manifests itself as an image. Now, the image is what is making you feel shit. Okay. The image is the thing that is allowing the negative emotion to persist. So it is the image that we need to manipulate, that we need to change, that we need to alter, that we need to get rid of and burn and tear up. If you're experiencing a negative emotion, there's a reason for it, okay? Now, whatever that reason is, tends to manifest itself as an image in your head. So that image could be a memory. It could be part memory. It could be somewhat constructed. You know, we've all felt negative emotions about another person that doesn't necessarily come from a distinct memory, but it comes from something that we imagine, a way in which we think about them. So whether it's a memory, whether it's constructed, right? So that's another thing in NLP, we refer to remembered or constructed, i.e. if you're remembering it, it happened and you're remembering it. If it's constructed, you're constructing it, i.e. you're literally making it up. But both are valid because they are in your mind and they are manifesting themselves as a negative emotion. So what we need to do is we need to manipulate them. So somewhat memory, maybe not. That's not the important bit. The important bit is the image that remains. We don't consciously think about it, but it's making us feel pretty shit, right? Now, this is the gift I am wanting to give you tonight. This is what I'm handing over to you, okay? I'm handing over to you the gift of consciously thinking about what that image is and how it manifests itself. Let me give you an example, right? When you are experiencing a negative emotion that you don't want to be experiencing, what I want you to do is I want you to do this on your own as well when you have time. I want you to stop. I want you to feel it. And I want you to really think about it. I want you to think about the negative emotion. I want you to think about how it feels. I want you to think about where it comes from. And then as you start to really connect with the negative emotion, I want you to start to understand what image is creating that negative emotion. Because for those of you that are more kinesthetic, i.e. you prefer touch, for those of you that are more auditory, i.e. you prefer sound, and for those of you that are more visual, i.e. you prefer visuals, no matter which one of those you are, there's gonna be an image, right? There's gonna be an image. So what I want you to do is as you start to feel these negative emotions and you start to understand what it feels like, where it comes from, I want you to start to imagine what that image is. Literally, what are you looking at? If you close your eyes and you imagine it, what are you looking at? Now, it might make sense, it might not. It might be a memory, it might not. Either way, whatever the image is, that means something to you. Okay, that's important to you. That's your subconscious saying, hey, this is fucking important. This is what is making you feel crap, right? Now, it might make sense or it might not. Don't worry about that. The chances are it will, right? The chances are it will be actually directly linked to the reason why you're feeling bad. But if it doesn't make any sense, don't think you're getting this wrong because you're not. So once you've got that image, what I want you to do is I want you to start to recognize some very, very specific elements of that image. And this is where the NLP starts coming into this whole process. I want you to notice whether or not the image is close or far away. All right? Now, this is where, for those of you that have never come across NLP before, and I don't expect you to have done, you don't need to have come across NLP in order to be able to use this process. Start to consciously think about that. Okay, actually, if I really think about it, that image that I'm seeing, right? Let me just sort of like give you an example. Let's say, for instance, I'm feeling some really negative emotions about an argument I had with my brother, right? And it's making me feel really bad. When I stop and I feel it and I think about it, and I'm like, okay, right, this negative emotion I'm feeling, I've got this really specific image of me arguing with my brother, right? Let's say this is the example. I want you to start to consciously think about exactly what distance away from you that image is. Now, when you start to consciously think about that, you're going to start to really realize that it takes all sorts of different forms, right? So for instance, you might be completely surrounded by the image, right? You might end up realizing, fucking hell, I'm living inside this image. It's 360 degrees. I'm in it. I'm looking at it through my own eyes. I am in that memory 100%, or I'm in that image in its fullest extent. Or you might realize that you're actually looking at the image and the image is, say, I don't know, about a foot in front of your face. Or you might realize that the image is all the way across the other side of the room. It will take you by surprise, right? It will take you by surprise initially, because most people have never consciously thought about something like that. They've not consciously thought about, okay, this is how I feel. This is the image that's making me feel that way. And what distance, how far away is the image to me, right? So that's the first thing. And when you start to recognize the distance, how far away the image is to you. Second thing that I want you to start to pay attention to is whether the image has color or it's black and white. Okay? Does it have color or is it black and white? The next thing I want you to pay attention to is whether the image is moving, i.e. you are like replaying this image almost like it's a little movie, or is it completely dead still, like a picture, like a photo, like a painting, a still image. So far, what do we know about this image? We know what distance it is away from us. We know whether it's color or black and white, and we know whether it's a still image or whether it's moving, okay? Now, these three things are very, 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 very important, right? And I'm going to explain why in a minute, okay? I'm going to loop back around to it, but don't underestimate the importance of the details of the image. The fourth thing is whether or not that image has any sound. So this is going to be, obviously, you've got to do this on your own. You've got to do this in a comfortable space where you can really concentrate, because you're not going to be able to hear any sounds if this image is over my voice just going on and on and on. So after this, try it on your own. So what I want you to do is I want you to feel those emotions. I want you to see the image, and I want you to start to understand whether or not there is sound attached to that image. Really listen for it. You know, in my example, it might be a case of, yeah, there is sound. I can hear the argument between me and my brother. Maybe I can hear doors slamming. Maybe I can just hear, maybe it's random. Maybe it's a particular piece of music. It doesn't matter. It's unique to you. It is the way that your brain is decoding that image and that particular time in your life that is making you feel shit, right? So regardless, it's the way that your brain codes the way that you're feeling. Okay, so pay attention to it. So first and foremost, how far away is it from you? Secondly, is it black and white or is it color? Thirdly, is it a still image or is it moving? And fourth, is there any sound or is it silent? Okay. Now, this one's really important. Really, really, really important. We kind of mentioned it when I spoke about the distance, but let's get specific with this one. The fifth thing that I want you to pay attention to in the world of NLP is whether or not this memory, this image, is what we call associated or disassociated. I.e., what do I mean by that? When you experience this negative emotion that you no longer want, and you stop and you feel it and you think about it, and you get an image and you're like, yeah, that fucking image, that's the reason why I'm feeling this bad. What I want to know is, in that image, are you looking at the image through your own eyes, like you're reliving the memory and you're there? And that's what we call associated. Or are you disassociated, i.e., you can see yourself within the image, right? So either you're going to be able to see it through your own eyes, like you're experiencing it all over again, or you're going to be able to actually see yourself like you're watching yourself in a movie, right? So those are the 5 things that I want you to pay attention to, because those 5 things are the reason as to why this particular image is making you feel bad, is giving you a negative emotion, is dragging you down, is making you feel shit. Now, at this stage, you might be thinking, hang on a minute, how? No. You might be thinking, no. It's definitely the argument with my brother that's making me feel crap, not the way that I'm visualizing it and not the way that I'm seeing it, right? Now, the initial argument with the brother is the catalyst for why you have the negative emotion. But the negative emotion remains not because of the argument, but because of the way your brain decodes the argument. the way that your brain processes the argument. So if you can change the way your brain processes the argument, you change the way you feel about the argument, right? I'm using the argument as just one example, but of course you know what I'm talking about. So we must change the way your brain analyzes and decodes the event that's making you feel shit. And this is how we do it. Every single thing that I've just described to you is what we call a submodality. Okay. Now, what do I mean by submodality, right? It's just a fancy term that means description, really, because there are three major modalities, right, to any memory, to any event, to anything that we experience. The three major modalities are the way we see it, the way we hear it, and the way we feel it. Now, of course, we've got five senses. We've got two more. There's taste and there's smell, but those two are less important, right? They're the losers, right? They're just losers. Don't worry about them. Don't worry about taste and smell. Actually, no, to be fair, smell can, both taste and smell can actually have a pretty powerful effect on reliving certain emotions. But for now, they're losers. Don't worry about it. So the way you see, what you see, what you hear, and what you feel, they're called modalities, right? And submodalities are, for instance, let's say the modality of the way something looks. A submodality is like, well, okay, well, how does it look? Is it close or far away? Is it black and white? Is it color? Is it big and is it small? So you get the picture. The modality of the way something sounds, a submodality is it loud or is it quiet? Is it smooth or is it scratchy? You know, is it brassy or is it vibrant? Do you know what I mean? So what we're doing, the reason those submodalities are so bloody important is because submodalities are the reason and the way that your brain decodes information. So basically, if you play with the submodalities, you change the emotion. So this is how we eliminate negative emotion. Negative emotion that you are not happy with. You feel it, you understand it, you close your eyes, you realize that there's one particular image that is making you feel, or at least contributing towards the perseverance of the negative emotion. We now understand that there are some submodalities that are attached to that negative emotion, i.e., that image that is making you feel crap, that image that is providing you with a negative emotion that you do not want. You guys have now discovered some very, very key submodalities to the image. You have discovered whether it is close or far away. You have discovered whether it is color or black and white. You have discovered whether it is a moving image or a still image. You have discovered whether or not there is any sound attached to this image. And you have most importantly discovered whether or not you are associated within it or you are watching it from a distance. Now, this is the trick. This is the key to eliminating the negative emotion that is attached to that image. What you do is you close your eyes, you conjure up the image, you understand that all of the submodalities surrounding that image are what are contributing towards you feeling a negative emotion. So what we need to do is change it. We need to alter it. So what you do is you see that image, you go through a process in your imagination, which is an incredibly powerful thing. And your imagination is there working for you. And you see the image, and first and foremost, the chances are, because it is having a strong negative effect on you, the chances are that image is indeed going to be full of color. That's very important, because if the image is having that much of a strong emotional hold over you, the chances are is it has a lot of vibrancy. Right, and I know I asked you before to understand whether it's color or black and white, but the chances are it has a lot of color, it has a lot of vibrancy. The chances are it's probably moving. The chances are you're probably associated within it. The chances are there probably is sound attached to this memory. There is a reason as to why this memory is having a strong negative emotional attachment to you. And that is because the submodalities of the memory remain strong. They remain vibrant. They remain moving and full of sound and full of color. They remain detailed, right? This memory remains detailed. So what you got to do is, as you have your eyes closed and you witness and you look at that image, the first thing I want you to do is I want you to drain all the color out of the image. Drain it of its color. Literally almost like you're turning on a tap underneath it, and all the color just comes draining out and draining out and draining out until it's this horrible, dingy, black and white, faded color. Then what I want you to do is I want you to notice that if it was indeed a moving image, like it was a movie and people were moving around, I want you to stop, pause it, freeze it, stop them in their tracks and continue to drain the color out of this image. Continue to drain it, drain it, drain it. And I want you to start to notice that if there are any sounds associated with this image, if you hear anything, you turn the volume down and it gets quieter and quieter and quieter till it's silent. So at this stage, what you're left with is a dingy black and white image that has lost detail, that's frozen and now is silent. And as you do that, I want you to start to notice, and I want you to start to do whatever you can to be able to get rid of the detail. Make it faded, make it hazy, make it just look crap. Almost like you're visualizing it turn into like mushy newspaper. It's horrible, black and white, mushy newspaper because it's got wet and it's losing its detail and it's losing its power and it's losing its hold over you because it's starting to feel weak and it's starting to feel pathetic. And then what I want you to do is I want you to start to notice how it's actually getting very, very small. And the reason it's getting very small is because you're sending it away. Visualize yourself sending it away, off into the distance, way, 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 way out in outer space. Send it out there. And even though it's all this way out in outer space, you notice it's still crappy and shitty, and it's losing detail, and it's losing its power, and it's losing even more color, and it's losing even more sound. You are draining the energy out of this fucking memory. You're draining the power that this memory has, that this image has over you, because you are controlling the way that your brain decodes the image. You've drained it of its color, you've drained it of its sound, you've drained it of its detail. You've sent it out into outer space, and now it's a million miles away. And the last thing I want you to do is I want to visualize yourself utterly destroying the memory in whatever way you can. Even all the way out there into the distance, in the depths of outer space, you set it on fire. You get a rocket launcher and fire a rocket at it, you explode it. You blast it into a million pieces. You smash it into smithereens. You do whatever you need to do to visualize that memory that had such a hold on you previously, that made you feel so negative. You have destroyed that thing. And with it, you have destroyed every ounce of power that it has over your emotions. Because the image, the memory, the thing itself was no longer the reason as to why you felt bad and the reason as to why you had a negative emotion. Perhaps it was the catalyst. It was the reason why that negative emotion was born, but it was not the reason why the negative emotion persisted. It persisted because your brain decoded it in a certain way. It gave it certain submodalities, and you have just destroyed each and every one of those goddamn submodalities. You drained it of its color, you drained it of its sound, you drained it of its detail, you threw it all the way out there into outer space, and you destroyed it. And by doing that, you automatically become disassociated with the memory. Remember I mentioned that? You're either associated or disassociated. You have automatically become disassociated because you have thrown it out there. You have cut the ties. You have got rid of it. You have thrown it away. And you no longer have to be held hostage due to that memory. So that's technique number one, right? Okay, so the second technique is all about internal dialogue, right? It's all about this voice that's inside your head. Don't worry, you're not crazy, okay? We've all got one. We all have internal dialogue. We all have self-talk. Now, your self-talk is unbelievably important, right? Unbelievably. It is the catalyst for so many things in your life. And it is especially important when exploring emotions, negative or positive. But of course, on this training, we're looking at negative emotions. So the chances are, as well as those images that we've been speaking about, which is one piece of the puzzle, the second piece of the puzzle is the internal dialogue. The chances are this thing, this voice inside your head, and I say internal, could even be external, but mainly it's the way we speak to ourselves inside our own head that massively contributes towards the way that we feel, right? This is a little tip for you. Say this to your clients. If you wouldn't say it to a friend, don't say it to yourself. If you wouldn't say it to a friend, don't say it to yourself. If you're saying things to yourself like you're so stupid, you're so useless, you're really crap at everything, you're not worth this, you're not worth that, you're not good enough, stop and think to yourself, would I say that to my best friend? And if the answer is hell no, I wouldn't, because it's mean and it's not true and it's only going to make them feel bad, don't say it to yourself, because you live with yourself every day. I live with myself. So does the world, right? When it all comes down to it, there is one person that is left standing in the room with us when the dust has settled and everyone else has disappeared, and that is you, right? That is yourself. So you must have a very, very good reputation with yourself. But there's one thing that tends to happen and it gets people down, and that thing is negative internal dialogue, the voice inside your head. God, that's worrying, isn't it? That sounds hollow when I do that. That is really worrying. I know I get bad migraines in this eye, and I've just realized if I do that, this side of my head sounds hollow. Maybe there's nothing there. Right, so the negative internal dialogue, the voice inside your head. There's one very, very simple NLP trick that you can do that completely and utterly takes the power away from the negative internal dialogue. This is the exercise. There probably are a few things that you tend to say to yourself. There might be a few things, there might be one or two that they tend to repeat themselves, right? Whether that's, I'm not good enough, I'm not fast enough, I'm not good looking enough, I'm not whatever, smart enough, you're so stupid, you're so slow, you're not worthy of this, whatever, right? Whatever these goddamn voices are that are making you feel crap and giving you a negative emotion, what I want you to do is I want you to recognize not so much what the voice is saying, but how is it saying it? Okay, so I'm going to say that again. Don't worry too much about what the voice is saying. Worry about how it's saying it. Because when it comes to the submodalities of internal dialogue, we are affected by the way in which something is said to us, not the detail of what is said. I'll give you an example, right? If you were to say to somebody, you are the best mother anyone could ever hope for, right? If you were to say that to your mum, you are the best mother anyone could ever hope for, the chances are that would make her happy. But it's not so much what you're saying, it's how you're saying it. Because if you said you're the best fucking mother anyone could ever hope for, right? You are the best mother anyone could ever hope for. Imagine if you said it really sarcastically, right? It completely changes the whole vibe. It doesn't matter about the words. It only matters about it doesn't matter about what you're saying. It matters about how you're saying it. And it's the same with your brain. It's the same with internal dialogue. The chances are, if you're saying things to yourself that are creating a negative emotion, it's not the words that are the problem. It's the way that you say the words. Maybe you even hear someone else's voice. Maybe you hear your mom or your dad or your brother or your teacher or your boss when you hear that voice that says you're so stupid, or it says that you're not good enough. Maybe it's not even your voice. Regardless of whose voice it is, regardless of what the voice is saying, the reason it is creating negative emotions is because of the way in which it is said. So here's the trick. Here's the key. You don't change what's being said to you. So let's say, for instance, one of the pieces of internal dialogue that gets you down is that voice inside your head that says, you're so stupid, you're good for nothing, right? Imagine that. Imagine that is the sentence that's getting you down. Don't change it. Don't change what's said, but change the voice to a very, very silly one. The sillier, the better. Change it to SpongeBob SquarePants. Change it to Daffy Duck. Change it to Mickey Mouse. Change it to that silly English teacher who always made you laugh. Just change it to an incredibly silly voice. Very simple, yes. Very effective, hell yeah. All right? Because it's not the words, it's the tonality, it's the speed, it's the spacing, it's the actual sound of the sentence that makes you feel crap and creates negative emotions. You change the tonality to something humorous, something light, something funny. Like, imagine Mickey Mouse, right? You've probably got the world's most ridiculous voice. Vividly imagine in your head right now, Mickey Mouse saying to you, you're not good enough. Imagine fucking Mickey Mouse telling you you're not good enough, right? But like, imagine his voice, his squeaky voice. It is funny when I think about it. Imagine Mickey Mouse saying that sentence to you. You're not good enough. You're good for nothing, in Mickey Mouse's voice. I promise you it will lose 100% of its power.